A short time ago, in a galaxy far from far away. Prepare for an astonishing adventure, full of mystery, full of danger, and full of artistry. At stake were not just one boy's fate, but the fate of the whole moon, and the Earth, and the Sun, and galaxy.
I know I'm already sidetracking at the beginning of the video, but does anyone know anything about Sony's first-party studio, Japan Studio? Of course, many people are familiar with the name and the numerous popular, highly regarded games throughout the generation of PlayStation. But my problem is, why is it called Japan Studio if it so obviously wasn't made by one studio? The name Japan Studio isn't even plural, as if it was made by one team, which is impossible because of the ridiculous amount of games released, and those games were so different from one another, it cannot be from the same creative team. Yes, these days, thanks to AAA development, studios like Rockstar, Ubisoft, and Eidos needed more hands to create bigger games to compete, so they build different branches of the same company to support the original studios, or sometimes create their own games and IPs. But Japan Studio doesn't even have branches, because if they do, the games would at least have their studio name on it, but no, it's just Japan Studio and nothing more. Sure, there's teams within studios that find themselves, like Team Ico, the creator of Ico, Shadow of the Colossus and the Lost Guardian, Team Siren, known for the Forbidden Siren games but changed to Team Gravity nowadays because they move on to Gravity Rush. Yes, the team behind the survival horror series Forbidden Siren worked on Gravity Rush, and also the director for the 3 Siren games and the 2 Gravity Rush games were the director of the first Silent Hill. He was also the character designer for Snatcher, another Konami classic. Pretty cool, huh? Wait, I'm getting distracted again. The whole reason why I'm rambling about this so insignificant point is that I played Puppeteer, which is developed by Japan Studios, and is absolutely amazing, and it pisses me off. Why? I want to know the people behind this to congratulate them and give them the recognition they deserve. But because of this mess that is Japan Studio and the Open Live being a singular studio, I couldn't find much information about them to do what I wanted. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's time to talk about Puppeteer. Puppeteer is a PS3 action platformer. Wait, that sounds familiar. I guess I have platforms on my mind. Released in 2013 and developed by Sony Japan Studios. And like I said before, like I said again, it's absolutely awesome. What's so special about Puppeteer? Puppeteer is a beautiful game that uses original ideas of using the medium of puppet theatre to give an amazing experience like nothing else. I'm not just talking about the art style, which most games would just replicate and be done with, but Puppeteer is more than that. The curtain stage isn't just a simple static image to use as a border. The curtain was used heavily to add the atmosphere of being in the theatre. The front and back planes are used in cutscenes to add the authenticity to the theatre and make it all seem genuine and almost real. The transition of each scene and level is ingenious, because instead of the simple fade to black transition like most games use, the whole landscape, backgrounds, and the puppets will just move out of sight, and then the second, another background, foreground, and puppets will move in and replace the previous ones. Just like what a puppet show would do, and it reminds us of the whole game is just an entire puppet show. I cannot forget the actual detail of each of the character models to make sure they're actual puppets. Each character will be made out of wool, felt, and other materials that puppeteers will use to create their show. The little details like that, it truly adds so much to the experience. But how can you have a puppet show without the audience? Yes, there's an actual audience that react to the plot, characters, and action of the player to laugh, gasp, and cheer, like what a theatre would usually do.
Meet our hapless hero, who's just blinked back to life, firmly in the Moonbear King's clutches.
Kutaro, your soul was summoned here at my behest. Kutaro, will you be my friend? Pals to the bitter end.
It feels so unnatural at first to hear other fictional people behind a camera reacting similarly to you, but I think it's wonderful. But for those who don't, there's an option to lower or mute the audience if you don't want to listen. So since Puppeteer is a puppet show, what's the story about? It's the amazing story of Kotaro, which started by the narrator starting the show at the main menu of the game.
Come one, come all, to the most phenomenal, most extraordinary, most unimaginable puppet show you've ever experienced.
Like I said before, amazing attention to detail. A boy whose soul is stolen by the evil Moon Bear King. A villain has taken over the moon by invading and overthrowing the moon goddess to become a tyrannical ruler. Kotaro only, mere seconds after being transformed into a puppet, his head was ripped apart by the king, was thrown aside into the dungeon. He was rescued by a flying cat called Yin Yang, and the owner, the Moon Witch, tasked Kotaro to sneak to the king's throne room to steal a pair of scissors in exchange for his return back to Earth. The giant pair of scissors is a powerful weapon that the Moon Bear used to take over the moon called Calibus. But the Moon Bear King noticed Kotaro's thievery, and Kotaro ended up escaping the castle. And along the way, he rescued a lost princess who looks like a fairy thanks to the Moon Bear King is shrinking her to imprison her. And what they need to do is to collect all the pieces of the Moonstone to bring back the Moon Goddess to get rid of the Moon Bear King for good. Now it may sound like Puppeteer will be a straightforward, serious but surprisingly dark adventure story aimed at young children. But believe it or not, Puppeteer is more of a comedy. For someone who doesn't really laugh much, Puppeteer is actually funny.
Oh my gosh, that was so totally gross! I'm covered in tiger slobber. Do you have any idea how much I pay already for dry cleaning?
I had dreams once. I was beautiful once.
Could you shut up once?
The strong voice acting alongside great writing gave such memorable scenes that generally make me laugh. Honestly, I could go for hours about breaking down so many scenes and see how great it is, but I don't want to spoil it because you really need to see it for yourself. So we talked about the gorgeous presentation, story and comedy, which is high quality as it can be. The gameplay, the meat of the game, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Now let's look at the good. Remember what I said about Calibus? It's the main arsenal of Kotaro, which you use these giant scissors to cut the obstacles like scissors, since it makes sense since the whole world of the game is made out of paper, felt and other soft materials, just like puppets. Most challenges require Kotaro to jump and cut the enemies and obstacles with the right analog stick and the square button to cut. But that's not all. Throughout the game, Kotaro will gain different levels of attack and pass through challenges like bombs, grapple hooks and shields to pass the levels. It's quite fun to use, and the game never gets boring with interesting levels that will change things up before it gets too stale. But sadly after that, Puppeteer will start to fumble when it comes to other game mechanics. Throughout the game, Kotaro would be accompanied by other characters such as Yin Yang or the Tiny Princess, but you can actually control them by using the right stick or to be controlled by the second player, which you can use to interact with the environment such as specific items in the background or floating items to restore Kotaro's health. My problem is that besides the first few levels, the mechanic isn't used often, besides to restore Kotaro's health, and at the time I could completely forget about even using the right stick at all. It reminds me a lot of Rayman Legend, back when the game was a Wii U exclusive, you can control the character Murphy using their touchpad to interact with the game's environment. But the difference is that Murphy is used heavily to control the switches and solving puzzles for the rest of the character to get through, making him vital, which isn't true for Puppeteer. What also doesn't work is the head switching mechanic too. Oh yeah, I forgot, since Kotaro's head was ripped out, he can use other heads of other puppets to use in gameplay too. What does it do? Well, it represents his health by how many heads he can carry, which is 3, and sometimes there's a specific location. You can press the down D-pad to trigger a Q animation for each little head, and it can change the outcomes of the levels too. For example, you can use the specific head for a boss fight and it can nullify his power attack by becoming harmless, or in the level, you could be rewarded by using a moonstone. It sounds cool, but in theory the heads aren't really useful much and can be very easy to lose since one attack can fly off of Kataru's body and can easily fall off the level or disappear into collectibles. So if there's a head needed for a specific place, there's a high likelihood that you don't have it. Even with these few flaws, I highly recommend Puppeteer. It's a solid, unique platformer with amazing visuals, funny plot, and amazing music by Patrick Doyle. The game is available both on PS3 physically and digital download, as well as being on PS Now on PS4 and PC, so there's no excuse to at least try. It's such a shame that the game never got the popularity and recognition it deserves, even with this positive feedback from critics. But yet another game, which came out the same year, will not only get over 1 million copies, but was also developed by Japan Studio, that got a sequel years later called Knack. Yes, Puppeteer, now living in obscurity, doesn't get a sequel, but Knack gets one, even though no one at the time of release and now doesn't even like Knack. What kind of world is this? But even with this sad fact, I at least brought you the attention of a great game to try out for fans of platformers to play who missed this. I'm Chem the Chameleon, ending on this video with strong optimism. Signing out.